everybody, welcome back to the Claremont Classic Garage. Today we're going to finish up Gord's 1949 Ferguson TE20. We're going to get the brakes and the axle seals all straightened out. We're going to get it filled up with hydraulic oil, fire it up, do our adjustment, and then that should be it. It should be as good as new. First though, we have to take apart this icky mess. We're going to start by pulling out this drain plug. There's a little bit of a well here at the end of the axle tube that keeps oil to keep the bearing wet. And you'll have a few ounces of oil in there. So we'll pull the plug and let that come out. Now we can take the brakes apart, which is pretty easy. There's two return springs. You just grab them with a pair of vice grips, stretch them a little bit, and you'll be able to get the hook out of the hole. Once the return springs are removed, we can just get the adjuster wheel out of there. We should be able to. There we go. What a mess, eh? Now we need to remove these two cotter pins and the hold down plate. It just pulls right off the pins, the anchor pins. And we're going to remove top and bottom the locking nuts that are they're the hold downs. There, see? And then once we get that off, our icky brake shoe comes right off. Next thing we got to do is get the pin out of this pedal, the clevis for the brake rod. It's a clevis pin going through a clevis. And it looks like there's no cotter pin in it, so I got a funny feeling that pin is stuck in there. So we'll give it a little tap. And if it seems like it doesn't want to come out, we might have to try and get it out the other end and take the whole works off and separate it on the floor. All right, so we had to take it out at the front end, and you can see even then we had to get it hot. But no big deal, it's out. That's the main thing. We'll fix it up after. So now that we've got that done, we have to go around and take all 6 of these nuts off. Most of the time the studs will come out with them, but that's no big deal. So we can get the axle and the backing plate with all of this stuff off the tractor. Once we've got this hardware removed all around, we're going to grab a hammer and just slowly start tapping either side of the backing plate, because you're getting these studs, these long studs go from the bearing retainer right through the flange out. They're pretty long, so you have to kind of walk it off. And this thing here puts kind of an odd load on it and wants to bind it up. But you just work patiently and slowly. Don't hit it hard enough that you start bending or wrecking stuff. Just tap away on it, and next thing you know, you'll have it out in your hands. These axles you'll see already have sure seals in them. But you can see, I guess from when it was installed, that one's managed to get a hole poked through it with a chisel. Well, or a punch, pardon me. That's going to totally defeat the purpose of the sure seal. Because, let me show you something. Here's the sure seal. And you can see it ends up sitting in there like that, right? So quite frankly, it's not the seal here around the axle that keeps the oil out of the bearing as much as the seal around here. So when you put these in, you have to make sure that everything is spotless clean and you get a good amount of sealant around here. And then you've got to get the thing in perfectly straight and smooth. And it'll last a good long time and not give you trouble. I've seen some of these that are so old, they're actually leather seals, but these ones look to be the oh no, maybe not. I'm looking at them now. They might be old leather ones. Anyway, we'll find out when we get them out. But first we got to go over and get everything power washed. I also want to get the axles separated from the backing plates. So now I've got the axle. A handy place to work on it is to just sit it in the brake drum. I've pulled off the 2 brass shims that were on it. We will just put those back in when we put it back together, and we will set the end play on the bearings from the other side. Basically what happens is each axle has a thrust button on the end of it like this, and you shim it so that they're just barely touching. I'll show you how to do that. We set the clearance from the other side. You can set it from either side really, but we're going to set it from the other side. So what I'm up against now, I got to poke some holes in these old seals and pry them out. Then we're going to get everything cleaned up, and I'll show you how to put the new ones in. So these are old leather ones. They've been in there a long time, man. Now what we're going to have to do is get this all cleaned up, and then we're going to try our best to get a bunch of grease packed down into that bearing. And we also have to get this bore cleaned up so that when we push in our new seal, it's gonna seal against that bore and not let oil pass through. I've got the bearing all packed with grease. That's an important step that not everybody thinks of when they put sure seals in. They just hammer the seals in and think they're done. But once you put sure seals in, now you've cut off the supply of lube to the axle bearing. So it's very important. So I've packed that cavity with grease and worked it down into the bearing. We've packed the back of the sure seal with grease, and this smooth surface here, this ground surface where the seal lip runs, I've got that all greased up. To explain this a little better, the original axle seal is out here. So that seal is beyond the bearing. So that means the bearing runs in the axle loop. It's a leather seal. They leak like sieves. So rather than destroying, because once you go to replace the axle seals, you must also replace the bearing and the lock collar because you wreck it all taking it apart. So sure seals are the best bet. So what we're going to do now is very carefully lower this little guy down there. Work it over there. Now, we've got it sitting there where it needs to go in. I'll show you how we install it. Find something that fits around it nicely. We luckily have this old bearing race that fits there nice, and we're just going to tap our way around with a hammer and slowly work it down. You can also use a long piece of pipe, and you can whack on it up there. I've seen videos where some guys use black ABS drain pipe from the house, and that seems to work nicely. It's just the most important thing is to make sure the end of it is square, and it's going to push the seal down evenly. You could even use this and flip it over and put it in a press and push it in that way. But we'll just go around and work it in with a hammer. I'll be back when I'm done. The goal of what I like to do anyway is get it down just a little below flush like we've done here. And then I've cleaned all of this up with brake clean to get any trace of the grease out of there. And we're going to get some silicone and we're going to go all the way around this thing to make sure, or as sure as we can, that no gear lube can get past this into the bearing because it will work its way out through the old seal and wreck your brakes again. And that's how it should look when it's done. And we've gone ahead and put a little bit of silicone on both sides of our brass shims and stuck them on. Let that tack up for a sec and we can put this thing all together. Now I've stuck one of our studs that came out in the top hole. That's okay, we'll use that as a guide bolt. And we're just going to stick a brand new paper gasket on there. You can get these at any tractor place. They're like a dollar a piece. Over time, originally it would have had all shims like this. It would have been all done with brass, but over time they get used up and wrecked and whatever. So when you go to buy them now, they're you get paper ones, but they work just fine. So we're going to hang the backing plate on that, and then we're going to stick this through there. This goes through the backing plate, and we can bolt her up and get it torqued down. There we go. So that's it. It's just started in, and you have to jiggle it around a little bit because, lucky for us, the axle starts engaging the splines of the diff at exactly the same point that these studs need to start engaging the holes in the flange. Oh, well, that's just how it goes, right? But we've got it started, so we'll just work it in. Might have to tap it with a little piece of brass, and we'll get all the fasteners done up and torqued to 60 foot-pounds. Alrighty, there's that side fixed up. Now we'll get the other side going, and I'll show you how we're going to set the axle end play. Well, we did the same procedure, and now we've got the left axle ready to go in. I just put back the shims that were on it, and we're going to stick it in and see how the end play feels. Now, there's several ways you can do this. What you're looking for is just a little bit of a gap in between the ends of the axle shafts, right? But you can see here right now, we've got over 30 thousandths. That's way too much. So we're going to pull this axle back out. We're going to remove, there's a thick shim and a thin shim on it. We're going to remove the thick one and put it back together and see what we end up with. Now you can see all we've got in this side now is the one thin shim and one paper gasket. That's the bare minimum. And we've still got about 22 thou of end play. That's still not really what I would like to see. If I could get it down to 10 or so, I'd be happy. So we're going to go around. We're going to take the other side apart again and take the thick shim out of the other side, which against my better judgment, I left in there the first time because I figured it's there. I'll just leave it there. But you know what? I should have known better. I should have known better. I always start with nothing in the one side and shim the other side. Anyway, live and learn. My mistake. I pulled out the thick one on the other side, which turned out to be a 30. The thick one on this side was a 10. And now the end play is practically, it's pretty much at 0. And a way to check if you've got it right is to turn one wheel one way. And if the other wheel goes the other way, it's just there. But the problem is, being that it's got sure seals in it now, and it's not going to have that constant flow of lube from the axle case or from the diff case, I would like to have just a little bit of clearance in there. So what we're going to do is pop that side back out again, and instead of the 30 that we took out, we're going to put in a 10. Or I may take, I got to measure the thin one that's in there, and I may put in a paper gasket because they're 15, and I think they crush down to about 10. We'll figure it out. Let's see what we got now. Good. We got 5 thou. That's good. Maybe 6 if I get on it, you know, and really pull. That's perfect. Anywhere 5 to 10, I think I would be happy. If these things were still, like I said, bathed in gear oil, I might try to get it down a little bit more, but we're good right there. That's perfect. Now I got our brake shoes we got to clean up. So, yes, you could just go and buy new ones, but what fun is that? That costs money. So what we've done, we've had these, we power washed them, then we put them in the solvent tank. Now we're just going to go over it with this propane torch. And I don't know if you can see that, but you can see it, how it becomes wet. That's lifting the oil right out of the friction material. And then you see the fire, that's the oil burning away. So you just keep doing that. You go back and forth, nice and slowly. You don't want to heat up. If you get the lining too hot, you'll wreck it. But we're just going to keep going like this. Back and forth, nice and slowly, till the oil stops coming out of it. That went pretty well. Once it dries off, we'll give it a little scuff with some emery, and you'll see it'll look pretty good. All right, I've got this brake all together now. I'll show you step by step when we go to the other side, but I wanted to do this one first to show you why the centralizer is always broken. These old Ferguson tractors, both ends of the adjuster is threaded. So when you turn it, you extend both ends out. And what happens, this thing here is to hold this, literally to centralize the brakes. And when you adjust the brakes, before you do it, you're supposed to loosen this lock nut on the back, which lets the centralizer float around until you've got your brake adjusted. Then once the brake is adjusted, you tighten that back up. Nobody does that. So when they start adjusting the brakes, it starts letting this thing move around and it breaks. So anyway, on the other side, I'm going to fix it up. I'm going to weld a new piece onto it. And we'll see how it lasts. If the brakes are adjusted properly, it should last fine. You can see our shoes now that they're all set. They look like new. So I'm gonna put the drum on, put the 2 screws in it, and I'll get this side the preliminary. Boy, I got marble mouth today. I'll get the preliminary adjustment done, and then we'll put the other side together. First thing we got to do is get the brake rod up and back attached to the cam here, or the whatever you want to call this this mechanism that operates our brake. I made a little piece and welded it onto the centralizer. Like I said before, so long as we adjust the brake properly, it should be fine, just like that. So anyway, that's what we've done. Let me get it put back on, and then we can hang the shoes. Now we can put the brake shoes on. The big end with the eye goes over that anchor pin, and they just go on like that. Then to hold them down, we've got a big washer, and a 5/16 fine locking nut. And I've replaced both of those. We'll put new ones. And you wind it down so you can just move the shoe, and it's a little free, but it's not binding up. See, like that? Just perfect. They've just got a little room. That one I could even touch up just a tiny bit more. I've already cleaned up the adjuster and made sure both of these turn freely, the screws or whatever you want to call them. They're nice. They're made out of solid brass. So now what we're going to do is we're going to stick it in there. The disc part of it goes in the centralizer assembly like that, and then we engage it on the shoes. I'll show you when we're done. Then we pop in the 2 return springs. This one hooks in on the back side of that one, and then we stretch it up and grab that, just like that. And then we put the front one on. Looking good. Now the last thing we're going to do is put this retainer on and stick the 2 cotter pins through. Now we can put the brake drum back on, and the at least one screw that I've got, and I'm going to climb up on my shelf and look in my box of Ferguson bits and see if I've got another screw for this. Well, I haven't got one. But we can go ahead and adjust them up. So what you do, we've got our centralizer loose, right? That's what we want. And we wind this up. There we are. Until she's totally locked up. All right? That's got everything centralized. So at this point, we can lock down the centralizer. There we go. Now we start backing this thing off until the wheel starts to turn. There we go. Perfect. That is a perfectly adjusted Ferguson brake. I put the little pipe plugs back in the bottom of the axle tubes here. I had originally hoped that they kind of went in at a bit more of an angle and got up into the bearing, but it doesn't. So it's literally just a drain plug. So we put those back in. Now we could go ahead and fill it up with oil. It goes in this plug here. It's a common plug for all three: the transmission, the hydraulics, and the rear axle. It takes it a while to percolate all through back, but that entire bucket goes in here. That's literally the capacity of it. So we'll pull this plug out and dump our bucket of oil in. I filled it up, and the oil was having a really hard time percolating through to the back. So I've got it running, and I've got it running in 4th gear, and I can finally see the level in the transmission going down, because as it sloshes it around, it makes its way back to the back. It's a goofy way, but that's the way we got to do it. Now I've put the PTO on. Let's see if we've got any oil going into the hydraulic pump. I'd say we do. Good. And as this oil starts getting warm, it'll more want to go to the back. It'll be fine. For the life of me, I cannot figure this out. The oil will not go back into the back end of the transmission. It's just pouring out the vent on the front of the transmission. So we're gonna have to. I don't know. I gotta come up with some sort of idea here. It's my favorite night to work out in the shop, Monday night. I put Star Trek on, and I fiddle around. Tonight it's the Spectre of the Gun, where they end up at the OK Corral. That's a classic, this one. I let it sit while I had dinner, with the front of it up in the air. And the oil trickled back to the back of it. It's all good now. It says full on the dipstick. Everything's good. It's not dripping out anymore. I kind of think that when it was so over full, it wasn't going past the input seal. It was going past the ends of the shift rails. Or something. Or maybe there's a vent hole up at the top of it, because I've had it out bombing all over the place, getting it hot, getting the oil sloshing around, and there's not a drip of anything coming out of it now. So I think we're okay there. Now we're going to quickly adjust the hydraulics on this thing. It's pretty simple to do. We'll get her fired up here. So how it works, let me clean this motor out a bit. Good. The quadrant holes are slotted, so you can move it fore and aft. And what you want to do is have this thing adjusted so that when you move the touch control lever down to about there, it starts to go down. And we're not there yet. Alright, I've got that working pretty much as good as I can. Now what we're going to do is make sure the draft control works. Once we've got all this stuff adjusted, the last thing we got to do is put it down like we're plowing, and we're gonna check the draft control, the Ferguson system. So what's going to happen is we've put the plow down, it's engaged in the ground. Imagine the plow is back here. We're going along, and the plow hits a tree stump or a rock or some obstruction. The plow is going to pivot this way, and the top link is going to push on that spring. And I'm going to mimic that, and the hitch should go up. There. You can see it works. And then when the obstruction is cleared, the hitch goes back down. The quadrant adjustment is still a little funny on this thing, though. I got to work on that some more. Poor old Captain Kirk, man. He just finished dealing with the OK Corral. He got through that. Then now he's got a bunch of Klingons pointing guns at his head. This guy, man, I wouldn't want to be him. All right. I tweaked the quadrant a tiny bit more and got it working. Basically, what you want is about 70 millimeters, 2 1/4 inches or so. From there, you get to about, there, and the lift should start going down. Stupid me was just standing here doing it without having any weight on it. So that it was throwing me off because it wouldn't go down. But once I set my derriere on the lift arm there, and then I was able to adjust it correctly. So it's all working good now. We have no leaks. That's it. I give it a clean bill of health. I can call up Gord and let him know his baby's coming home. That'll do it for that one. That's another one that went a little longer than I had anticipated or hoped, but hey, we had a lot to cover. So we got the brakes all sorted out, sure seals fixed up. We had that difficulty getting the hydraulic oil through the system, but we figured that out. We thought the transmission seal was leaking. It's not. All good. And finally, we got the hydraulic lift, the Ferguson system, all adjusted up like it's supposed to be, and it's working just like the day she left Dagenham, England in 1949. Anyway, I'm going to go now. I would like to thank you for tuning into our little channel and continuing to support us as we try to grow this thing. I hope you'll come back and see what we're up to next time. And until then, this is Kevin saying so long from the Claremont Classic Garage.